I stood at the entrance to St. Joseph's Hospital, inhaling the fresh morning air. The cool October breeze played with my hair, reminding me of the changes it brought. Today was my first day at my new job, and I felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The familiar routine had been replaced by uncertainty, and it made me uneasy. I entered the building, where the usual hustle and bustle of a morning medical facility prevailed. White coats flashed around. Patients and staff hurried about their business. I headed to the operating room department, where I was supposed to meet my team. The elevator doors closed behind me with a soft whisper, and I mentally repeated my morning tasks. The operating room glowed with sterile white light. Instruments were neatly laid out, and monitors emitted a steady beep. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the trembling in my hands. At that moment, the door opened and a man walked in. Tall, broad-shouldered, and confident in his stride, he immediately caught my attention. His eyes met mine, and I felt a strange excitement. "Dr. Hale, pleased to meet you. I'm Dr. Jonathan Carter." His voice was deep and calm as he extended his hand to me. "Likewise, Dr. Carter," I replied, shaking his hand. Its warmth was palpable through the latex glove. We began the operation, and I noticed that Jonathan was not only an excellent surgeon, but also had a unique ability to create an atmosphere of calm around him. Even in the most tense moments, his confidence was transferred to everyone else. I found myself often looking at him longer than I should, studying his movements, gestures, and expressions. During one of the complicated manipulations, Jonathan glanced at me, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Dr. Hale, you have excellent hands for this work," he said with a light smile. I felt my cheeks flush. His compliment was unexpected, but pleasant. We continued working, and with each hour, our teamwork and professional harmony only grew stronger. It seemed as if we had known each other for a long time and had worked together for years. After successfully completing the operation, we removed our gloves and masks. And Jonathan spoke again. "Great job, Emily. How about celebrating our success with a cup of coffee?" His suggestion sounded innocent, but there was a spark in his eyes that was hard to miss. I nodded and we headed to the hospital cafe. The warm light and the smell of freshly brewed coffee created a cozy atmosphere. We sat at a table by the window, and for the first time all day, I felt relaxed. "So, Emily, tell me a little about yourself. Why did you choose this hospital?" Jonathan asked, his gaze focused on me. I told him about my career, how I had always strived for perfection, and why I decided to move to this city. Jonathan listened attentively, occasionally asking questions. He shared stories about his years in medicine, the cases that had left the most impression on him. At some point, our conversation shifted to personal topics. We talked about books, movies, and travel. I learned that Jonathan liked to take morning walks, that he had an old dog named Ben, and that he dreamed of going on a round-the-world trip someday. Our cups had long been empty, but we still couldn't part ways. Time flew by unnoticed, and I felt that there was something more than just a professional connection between us. There was an interest in his eyes that I couldn't ignore. "You know, Emily?" he finally said. "But also an interesting person." I smiled, feeling warmth spread throughout my body. At that moment, I realized that this day had indeed changed everything. And although difficult decisions and challenges awaited us, I was ready for them, knowing that there was someone by my side with whom I could share not only work moments, but something more. A week had passed since I met Dr. Jonathan Carter. We often crossed paths in the hospital corridors, exchanging smiles and brief conversations. Every time our eyes met, I felt warmth spreading through my entire body. It was a new, exciting feeling that I couldn't ignore. One morning, as I hurried to another surgery, my phone vibrated in the pocket of my coat. It was a message from Jonathan. "Come to room 302 after the operation." There's something I'd like to discuss with you. My heart started beating faster. What could it be? I tried to focus on my work, but my thoughts kept returning to that message. The surgery went well, and after removing my gloves and mask, I headed to room 302. I knocked on the door, and after a moment, I heard Jonathan's voice. "Come in." He was sitting at his desk, his face lit up with a gentle smile. He stood up when I entered and gestured for me to sit across from him. "Thank you for coming, Emily. I wanted to discuss a project we're about to launch at the hospital," he began, handing me a folder of documents. I opened the folder and began to read. It was a project to implement new treatment methods that could significantly improve the quality of medical care in our department. "This is impressive, Jonathan, but why did you choose me for this job?" I asked, looking up. He looked at me attentively, his eyes sparkling. "Because I see in you not only an excellent surgeon, but also a person who is ready to take on challenges and make changes. Besides, I think we'll enjoy working together." His voice was full of confidence and something else that I couldn't immediately recognize. "I agree," I replied, feeling a warm feeling growing inside me. Working on the project brought us even closer. We spent a lot of time together, discussing details, analyzing data, and developing plans. Our meetings often lasted late into the evening, and each time we said goodbye, I felt that something more was growing between us. One of those evenings, we were sitting in an empty conference room surrounded by piles of papers and laptops. I was tired and rubbed my eyes, trying to focus on the screen. "Maybe we should take a break," Jonathan suggested, pushing his papers aside. "I've heard there's a great spot on the roof to relax. How about going up and unwinding a bit?" I agreed, and we went up to the hospital roof. The night was quiet and cool, the city shining with lights below. We stood next to each other, looking at the stars. "Have you ever wondered how all these stars could tell us stories of the past?" Jonathan asked, his voice soft and thoughtful. "Sometimes," I replied, "but I think more about what the future holds for us." He turned to me, his eyes glowing in the moonlight. "And what do you see in your future, Emily?" His voice was quiet, but there was a spark in it. I didn't know what to answer. All my thoughts were jumbled. And I felt his proximity becoming unbearably attractive. "I don't know," I began, but he interrupted me, gently taking my hand. "I see a future where you and I work together, achieve success, and maybe something more." His words sounded like a whisper, but they penetrated deep into my heart. Our eyes met, and at that moment, everything else ceased to exist. Jonathan slowly moved closer to me, his face so close that I could feel his breath. He leaned in and gently kissed me. His lips were warm and soft, and I felt my heart beat faster. It was the first kiss I would never forget. We stood there on the hospital roof, under the starry sky, and I realized that my life had changed forever. At that moment, all doubts and fears disappeared, leaving only a feeling of joy and anticipation for a future that I couldn't wait for. Another week passed, and the work on our project with Jonathan continued to gain momentum. Each day was filled with tasks and discussions, but at the same time, I increasingly felt the growing tension between us. Our glances lingered longer, our touches became more noticeable, and I couldn't ignore the spark that flared up every time we were close. One evening, as the workday was coming to an end, Jonathan invited me to his office to discuss a few important details. We settled at his large desk, surrounded by papers and laptops. I sat next to him, and our close proximity only intensified my feelings. "Emily, take a look at these data," he said, leaning closer and showing me his laptop screen. I tried to focus on the numbers, but his closeness distracted me. His shoulder brushed against mine, and I felt warmth spreading through my body. I suddenly realized that my legs were trembling with excitement. "Jonathan, this is really interesting," I murmured, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. He turned to me, his eyes full of warmth and something else, something deeper. Our eyes met, and I felt my heart start to beat faster. At that moment, he slowly leaned in, his lips gently touching mine. It was a soft, exploratory kiss that instantly made me forget about everything else. My hands encircled his neck, and I felt him responding with even greater passion. And our kiss became deeper and more intense. His hands gently touched my waist, and I felt him slowly start to remove my coat. The soft fabric slid off my shoulders, exposing my skin, which immediately responded to his touch. His hands tenderly explored my back, moving up and down, while our kisses grew more passionate. I felt his fingers slowly slipping under my underwear, their touch both gentle and electrifying. He slowly unclasped my bra, and my heart pounded as if it would burst out of my chest. Jonathan stepped back for a moment to look at me, his eyes burning with desire. He carefully removed my clothing, and I felt the cool air on my skin, but his touch warmed me instantly, creating a feeling of safety and arousal. His hands moved slowly over my body, exploring every part. I closed my eyes, immersing myself in the sensations as his lips found my neck. His kisses were both gentle and passionate, leaving trails of heat that spread through my entire body. We descended onto the soft carpet, and I felt his body pressing against mine. Jonathan was gentle and attentive, his movements slow and assured. He slowly removed the remaining clothes, and each of his gestures was filled with desire and respect. When we were both naked, I felt his body begin to move with mine. It was like a dance, where our bodies merged into one. His hands and lips explored me with tenderness and passion that I had never experienced before. We made love, and it was something more than just physical pleasure. It was an act of unity, where every kiss and every touch spoke of our mutual attraction and desire. Jonathan was gentle and attentive, his movements full of care and passion. When it was over, we lay next to each other, embracing. I felt his warm breath on my skin and knew that this moment had changed us both. We didn't speak, just enjoyed the silence and closeness. This evening marked the beginning of something new, forbidden, but incredibly captivating. Another week passed, and my relationship with Jonathan grew even closer. We spent more and more time together, and it became noticeable to those around us. I felt that soon our relationship would reach a new level, but I wasn't sure how to prepare for it. One evening, as Jonathan and I were, Nurse Sarah entered the office. She looked agitated. "Dr. Carter, Dr. Hale, we urgently need your presence in the emergency department. We have a complicated case, and all our doctors are occupied," she said, looking at us with hope. Jonathan and I immediately headed to the emergency department. There, we saw a patient who urgently needed surgery. We quickly prepared and began the operation. Jonathan took charge of the surgery, and I assisted him at every step. The operation was complex and required full concentration. We worked as a unified team, and every step we took was polished to perfection. The patient was stabilized, and we successfully completed the operation. After the surgery, Jonathan and I returned to his office to discuss the results. I felt that we had become even closer after this challenge. "Emily, you were amazing today," he said, sitting down at the desk and looking at me with admiration. "Thank you, Jonathan." "But it was a team effort," I replied, smiling. We talked for a long time about work, our plans and dreams. But I felt that beneath these conversations lay something deeper. "Jonathan, I want to ask you something," I began, feeling a bit nervous. "How do you see our future?" He pondered for a moment. Then his face lit up with a gentle smile. "Emily, I know our relationship is complicated, but I believe we can make it work. I want to be with you." No matter what, his words filled my heart with joy and hope. I knew that many challenges awaited us, but I was ready to face them all, knowing that there was someone by my side whom I could trust and rely on. One morning, I walked into the hospital and felt that the atmosphere had changed. Colleagues were whispering, and some even gave us suspicious looks. I knew that rumors spread quickly, and it was inevitable. At lunchtime, I met Jonathan in the cafe. He looked worried and tense. "Emily, we need to talk," he said when we sat down at a table by the window. "I've noticed something is going on too," I replied, feeling my heart start to beat faster. "What's happened?" "It seems our relationship has become a topic of discussion among our colleagues. I've heard a few conversations and it concerns me," he said, his gaze serious. "I've noticed it too. What are we going to do?" I asked, trying to hide my anxiety. "We need to decide how we're going to proceed. I don't want this to affect our work and reputation," he replied, his voice filled with determination. We discussed possible options and decided to be more cautious in our actions and displays of affection at work. But I knew this wouldn't solve all our problems. We had to find a way to deal with the pressure and preserve our relationship. In the following days, I felt like I was on pins and needles. Every glance, every word from colleagues seemed to carry hidden meanings. Jonathan and I tried to behave as professionally as possible, but the tension between us continued to grow. One evening when I returned home, I received a message from Jonathan. "Emily, we need to meet. It's important." We agreed to meet in the park near the hospital. When I arrived at the designated spot, Jonathan was already waiting for me. His face was serious, and I felt that something had happened. "What happened?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "I received a warning from the hospital administration. They found out about our relationship and are demanding that we end it, or there will be consequences," he said, his voice filled with bitterness. I felt like everything inside me was collapsing. We knew our relationship would be challenging, but I didn't expect it to be this serious. "What are we going to do?" I whispered, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "We need to think. Emily, I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want our careers to suffer," he said, hugging me. We stood in silence for a long time, enjoying the warmth of each other. I knew that difficult decisions lay ahead, but I believed we could overcome them. At that moment, I realized that our love was stronger than all obstacles, and we would find a way to preserve both our careers and our relationship. One morning, as I sat in my office, the hospital director called and informed me that I was being offered a promotion, a position as the lead surgeon at a prestigious clinic in another city. It was an offer that was hard to refuse, but it meant I would have to leave and part ways with Jonathan. That evening, when Jonathan and I met, I told him about the offer. "Emily, this is a great opportunity for your career," he said, taking my hand. "I know how important this is for you." "Yes, but it means I have to leave," I replied, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "I don't want to lose you. We can try maintaining a long-distance relationship," he suggested, his voice filled with determination. "We can meet on weekends and keep in touch." My first day at the new hospital had arrived. I decided to dress particularly elegantly to make a good impression. I chose a short skirt and a top with a deep neckline that highlighted my figure. When I entered the chief physician's office, I was met by a young, handsome and athletic man. "Welcome, Dr. Hale. I'm Alex Harris, the chief physician of this hospital," he said, extending his hand for a handshake. "Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to meet you," I replied, feeling a flutter of excitement from his firm handshake. Over the next week, Alex and I talked a lot, worked together on projects and grew closer. His professionalism and charm did not leave me indifferent. One evening, he invited me for coffee after work. We sat at a table in a cozy cafe, and our conversation quickly shifted from work topics to personal ones. Alex was attentive and interesting, and I felt a special connection forming between us. "Emily, you are a wonderful person and an excellent doctor." "I'm glad you're with us now," he said, looking into my eyes. "Thank you, Alex. It's also a pleasure to work here and to talk with you," I replied, feeling my cheeks begin to blush. We talked for a long time. enjoying the warmth of the cafe and each other's company. When the evening came to an end, Alex offered to walk me home. I agreed, and we strolled through the evening city, continuing our conversation. "Emily," he began when we reached my home, "I'm glad we have the opportunity to work together and get to know each other better. You're special." I felt warmth spread through my body and smiled at him in response. "Thank you, Alex. I also enjoy spending time with you," I said, feeling a slight excitement. Our relationship continued to develop, and each day I felt our bond grow stronger. We worked together, shared our thoughts and dreams, and this created a special closeness between us. Several weeks passed, and my relationship with Alex grew even closer. We spent a lot of time together, both at work and outside of it. One evening, Alex invited me to his home for dinner. I agreed, feeling that the evening would be special. When I arrived, Alex greeted me at the door with a warm smile. His home was cozy and welcoming, and I immediately felt comfortable. "Welcome, Emily. I'm glad you agreed to spend the evening with me," he said, inviting me in. "Thank you, Alex. I'm happy to be here," I replied, taking off my coat. We sat down at the table and began dinner. Alex had prepared a delicious meal, and we enjoyed the food and conversation. The atmosphere was warm and relaxed, and I felt our connection growing more intimate. After dinner, we moved to the living room, where Alex lit candles and poured us some wine. We sat on the couch, talking and laughing, and I felt his presence becoming increasingly significant to me. "Emily," he began, gently touching my hand, "I want to get to know you better. You mean a lot to me, and I want you to know that." His words made my heart flutter, and I looked into his eyes. "Alex, I feel a strong attraction to you as well," I replied. He leaned in closer, and our lips met in a soft but passionate kiss. His arms encircled me, and I felt the warmth of his body enveloping me. We kissed, forgetting about everything else, and I felt my body responding to his touch. "You're so beautiful, Emily," he whispered, as our kiss grew deeper and more passionate. His hands began to slowly explore my body, gently touching every inch. I closed my eyes, savoring every moment. Alex slowly started to remove my skirt, his movements confident and tender. I felt his touch sending waves of pleasure throughout my body. He removed my clothing, leaving me in just my underwear. Alex admired me, his eyes filled with desire and admiration. He slowly took off my underwear, and we began making love. It was passionate and unforgettable, every gesture filled with tenderness and care. I woke up with mixed feelings. I realized I had made a mistake because Jonathan was still in another city. But maintaining a long-distance relationship was becoming increasingly difficult, and I couldn't continue indefinitely. I met with Alex after work and told him about my doubts. "Emily, I understand how you feel," he said, his eyes full of empathy. "But sometimes we have to make difficult choices. I want to be with you, and I'm ready to support you in everything." I knew Alex was right. My relationship with Jonathan was important to me, but I couldn't live at a distance forever. I decided to continue seeing Alex and start a new chapter in my life. Emily and Alex started seeing each other more often, and their relationship quickly developed. Emily realized she had made the right choice and felt happy with Alex. She knew that new challenges lay ahead, but she was ready for them, knowing that she had someone by her side whom she could trust and with whom she could build her future. Several more weeks passed, and I realized that I could no longer put off the important conversation with Jonathan. Our long-distance relationship was becoming increasingly difficult, and I couldn't continue maintaining this connection, knowing that my heart now belonged to someone else. One evening, gathering all my courage, I decided to call Jonathan. I dialed his number and, trembling with nervousness, waited for him to answer. After a few rings, I heard his voice. He asked, his voice full of warmth, but I sensed a hidden anxiety. "Hi, Jonathan. There's something important I need to tell you," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did something happen?" His voice became more serious. Jonathan, I want to be honest with you. It's very hard for me to say this, but I can't continue living at a distance, I said, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. Emily, I understand that it's difficult, but what do you mean? His voice was filled with pain. I've met someone here. His name is Alex, and our relationship has become very close. I understand that this isn't fair to you, but I can't continue our long-distance relationship, I said, trying to hold back tears. Emily, I've always wanted you to be happy, he replied, his voice quiet and full of sorrow. If Alex makes you happy, I understand. It hurts, but I can't hold on to you if your heart belongs to someone else. Thank you, Jonathan. I'm very sorry it turned out this way. You'll always be important to me, I said, feeling tears streaming down my cheeks. I'll always remember you too, Emily. You deserve happiness. I hope you find it, he replied, his voice full of sincerity. We talked a little more, trying to support each other during this difficult moment. Then we said our goodbyes, and I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. But along with that came a sense of loss. The next day I met with Alex and told him about the conversation with Jonathan. He listened attentively, then gently hugged me. Emily, you made the right choice. I'm here for you and I will always support you, he said, looking into my eyes. Thank you, Alex. It means a lot to me to know that you're here, I replied. Feeling his warmth and care helping me cope with the pain, we continued building our relationship,